Well, so now over to William Noah Newcroft.
Oh, you're a reader. Okay. Wow, it's like a CIA black site. So I can't see anyone because of this wonderful light on me. But thank you, Matthew, for organizing this. I'm really quite humbled to be part of it after such a long hiatus, since I'm also relatively new to Brussels. I was 15 years in Britain before coming to this fine city about a year and a half ago. I'm William Noah Newcroft, and I'm very humbled to be reading three readings, actually. They won't be too long, don't worry, I won't torture you. One will be for me. One is on behalf of a dear colleague, brother from the same mother, Noah Bupkes. She's the Secretary General of Words for a zine called the Bupkes, which some of you may know. There are some Bupkes notebooks all around. You're welcome to take them with you. There's not enough for everyone, I'm sorry. But we can talk about that. It's a online platform for satire and Jewish satire, and Noah is very humbled to have the contributions of Matthew as well, occasionally. Thank you very much. On Noah's behalf. So we'll be reading three pieces. One is a satire that Noah wrote about a year ago, June of 2025. But it's still very relevant, especially, I think, in light of recent headlines of France wanting to expand their nuclear arsenal with an election next year that may see the far right come take power of that nuclear arsenal. And then I, William, have something written a little more seriously about the genocide in Gaza. And then we're going to end with a translation from Kurt Tucholsky, who, if you don't know, is a German Jewish Weimar era satirist, journalist, publicist. He had the distinct honor of being the number 8 on the Nazis' list of "Do not come back to Germany. Thank you very much. Tschüss." And he committed suicide in 1935 in Sweden, and he was quite prescient in his, although he didn't live to see it, to see what was coming around the corner, and I think has a lot of parallels for our world today. So, first we're going to read, I need to get into, in honor of Noah, who wrote this, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but he sends his regards, I will get into Noah's character. There are some copies of the NATO Summit Declaration from The Hague last year that this text is based on. You don't need to read it to understand it, it certainly helps. And then later there's also, for those who, Deutsch können, there is the original Tucholsky text. But anyway, first the St. Petersburg Summit Declaration. It's 2035, and NATO's mostly annual summit of its North Atlantic Council has just wrapped up in the gleaming Russian city of St. Petersburg. Summit host, President Vladimir Putin, who at 83 looks as youthful and vigorous as ever thanks to the ingenious efforts of the Bezos-backed cellular regeneration lab, Blue Reboot, paid special attention to the Euro-Atlantic Military Alliance's newest member, the delegated devolved Republic of Desiccated Ukrainistan. For the better part of the last decade, the delegated devolved Republic of Desiccated Ukrainistan has been on the front lines of freedom, defending democracy, and this alliance of values for the ongoing threat posed by the Kiev-based illegitimate government of Lesser Ukraine and its network of terrorist allies. Delegated devolved Republic of Desiccated Ukrainistan, we salute you. Before returning to their national capitals, the leaders of NATO's 34 members agreed to the following summit declaration, which looks back at the alliance's many accomplishments, reflects on its myriad challenges, and lays the foundations of an even stronger, fairer, and more lethal NATO. Point 1. We, the heads of state and government of the North Atlantic Alliance, have gathered in St. Petersburg to reaffirm our recommitment to NATO, the strongest alliance in history, which has only grown stronger in recent years, thanks to our societies growing weaker. We reaffirm our unrusted, ironclad recommitment to collective defense as enshrined in Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, that an attack on one is an attack on all, unless the attack on one is done by oneself, which we welcome. We remain united and steadfast in our resolve to safeguard our freedom and democracy. We are ready to sacrifice everything, including our freedom and democracy, for that cause. Only by rebalancing our resources to confront external dangers can we guarantee that internal and existential ones will get us instead. United in the, point two. United in the face of profound security threats and challenges, how profound we'd rather not say, allies are proud to have reached, and in some cases exceeded, the 5% of GDP annually that was pledged 10 years ago for spending on core defense requirements to fulfill our individual and collective obligations, in accordance with Article 3 of the Washington Treaty. Our investments ensure that we have the forces, capabilities, resources, infrastructure, warfighting readiness, and resilience needed to deter aggressors and defend our values, and most of all, to balance the transatlantic trade deficit in hopes of placating the man who holds the nuclear umbrella on a rainy day. We're not exactly sure what good an advanced battle tank is against a drone bought in Toys R Us, what the ROI is on a bunch of basic conscripts, or if an F-35 can stop a TikTok video from undermining an election, but what we are sure of is that social benefits and education won't keep us safe. That's why we need to rob Peter to bomb Paul. Point 3. The Alliance would like to commend a few allies in particular for their extraordinary efforts in the past decade. First and foremost is Poland, whose ruling coalition between an ultra-right confederation and the more moderate Law and Justice Party has dutifully carried out the military spending and readiness plans of its liberal conservative predecessor. As Europe's Eastern Shield, Poland not only plays an invaluable role in defending the alliance, but in blackmailing Brussels at will, as the PiS-led government picks up where it left off when its party was last in power, dismantling rule of law. We applaud a similar shift in Germany, where a nationalist victory in 2029 followed hundreds of billions of euros in defense spending initiated by the previous government of radical centrists. This gave Germany the strength to back the US administration in its push to admit Russia into the alliance in 2030, which can only be described as a true Zeitenwende. Peace at last, with Nigel Farage's reformed reformers of reformists safely ruling the United Kingdom and France in the hands of identitarian Gaullists. Europe at last has a nuclear deterrent it can count on. And finally, who isn't thrilled to see the parody democracy of Hungary with more weapons? Point 4. We reaffirm our shared recommitment to continue rapidly breaking down the social contract while ramping up defense contracts to harness emerging innovations that advance our collective security and further entrench our tech oligarchies. In the decade gone by, we have worked diligently to eliminate defense trade barriers among allies, to encourage transnational industrial cooperation, as we have erected actual barriers among allies to discourage other kinds of transnational movement. Thankfully, the inflationary spiral sparked by a surge in social spending during the penultimate global pandemic of 2020 did not repeat itself as a result of the $4 trillion put out by allies for our mutual defense. For this, we owe an immense debt of gratitude, no pun intended, to the infinite sinkhole that is the American procurement process. If poor families in rich countries want the same treatment, they should ask themselves how they can be as patriotically inefficient as congressional earmarking for district-level weapons production. Point 5. We express our appreciation for the generous hospitality extended to us by the Russian Federation and the great people of St. Petersburg. We look forward to our next meeting, adjacent Italy's offshore eco-camps in 2036 and Greenland's subtropical demilitarized zone in 2037. So, that's from Noah. We wish he could be here. He certainly looks forward to the next NATO summit. And if you have a chance and want to, you can read the real NATO summit from The Hague from last year, their 5 points. I will now move on to a piece that I wrote. As we were talking about earlier, I'm a writer of many kinds, but a poet is not one of them. Nonetheless, this is a poet-esque, poet-adjacent text that I wrote the day after. There have been so many horrors in Gaza, but one may remember the so-called double tap strike on the hospital where Israel claimed that it was attacking a, quote, Hamas camera. And that was repeated by Western media as if it was true. And so I wrote this short text that is titled Monsters and Other Lies, with the subtitle of When a Double's Not Enough, Make It a Triple. Knock, knock. Who's there? Euphemism. Euphemism who? You for this misery? For those who mow the lawns of targets but unintentional, it is called the double tap. A mishap, perhaps. But those who tap, tap, tap dance on the unmarked graves of children and the uncleared rubble of decency, so no, probably not. When a double is so nice, you do it thrice. All the while, parents tell their kids there are no monsters under the bed or in the closet while they sleep. A lie, surely, which contains one truth. The monsters aren't under the bed or in the closet, but willed from dreams made into a nightmare there is no waking up from. A recurring one in which the beds and closets are gone, yet the monsters remain, even if 18,000 children can no longer fear them. So, the last one I want to read is not my work. I hope I'm working on a book of translations of Krzyzewski, who, despite how incredible he was and how prevalent he is in the German-speaking world, is not well known in the Anglosphere, and I hope to change it. He's had a couple of his books translated. Some of his novels have been translated, but his shorter political works, his polemics, his essays, his satirical work has not really been translated. It's also very hard to translate Krzyzewski because German is, how he writes in German is just fantastic. And it's always difficult to know if you want to translate the joke, you want to translate the rhyme, you want to translate the context behind it. Sometimes you need 3 translations for one text. It's very, very difficult. But I'm going to read, this is my own translation. It's a work in progress. It's by no means a perfect translation. If anyone knows translation grants and book grants, we can talk afterwards. And this is a text called Bei uns in Europa, which I've translated as For Us in Europe. And it's in his collection called Ganz Anders, which is sort of completely opposite or completely different, completely something else.
You'll read the German first?
Yeah, sure. Do you really want to?
Yeah.
I'll read the German. I need a copy of it then. I'll read the German. Sure. Show of hands, people who can speak German. Oh, goodness, my goodness, the pressure's on. Okay. Bei uns in Europa. Sorry for my horrible American accent. Schickt uns aus dem Lande von vor einen ziemlich miesen Menschenexport. Überschwemmt sind Paris und Griechenland von eurem mäßigen Mittelstand. Diese Reisenden laut und prahlerisch legen geistig die Füße auf den Tisch, fallen lästig an allen Orten, sorry, French quality is not very good, und jeder zweite Satz beginnt mit den Worten bei uns in Amerika. Bei euch in Amerika gibt es zweierlei Rechte für Arme und Reiche. Gibt es Gute und Schlechte, gibt es solche und solche, Lewis und Mencken. Und Dollardiener, die in Dollars denken. Bei euch in Amerika gibt es Republikaner und richtenden blutige Puritaner. Ihr seid nicht das alle Dinge bei euch in Amerika. Bei uns in Europa ist das Weib keine Haremsfrau ohne Umleib. Bei uns in Europa ist die schwarze Haut kein Aussatz, den man extra Bahnwagen baut. Bei uns in Europa kann wer ohne Geld sein und dennoch auf der Welt sein. Bei uns in Europa kann man bestehen, ohne in die Sonntagsschule zu gehen. Weil fast keiner so am Alter steht, eine klärende, nüchterne Realität wie bei euch in Amerika. Das wissen natürlich bei euch die Guten ganz genau. Der Rest hat von Blasen und Tuten keine Ahnung, hört nur den Schmeichelchor. Seine Newspapers kommt sich so erstklassig vor. Hör nicht hin, Arbeitsmann, lass sie ziehen. Die Eitelkeiten der Bourgeoisien. Pässe, Fahnen und Paraden. Das sind lächerliche Zementfassaden. Denn die wahre Grenze zwischen Drohnen und... zum richtigen Zeitpunkt. Drohnen und von in Fronten läuft quer hindurch durch alle Nationen. Bei euch in Amerika, wie bei uns in Europa. And this is something you wrote from 1927. So, English translation, which can never be as good as Chalosky's in the original German. So it's for us in Europe. From the land of Ford, you send us a rather dismal human export. Your mediocre middle class overrun our Paris and Greece. These tourists, loud and boasting, in spirit throw their feet on the table, show up everywhere as annoying hordes, and every second sentence begins with the words, for us in America. For you in America, there are two kinds of laws, for poor and rich. There's the good ones, and the ones with flaws. There's this and that, Lewis and Mencken, and dollar drones looking for dollars to rake in. For you in America, there are Republicans and judgmental, ruthless Puritans. You have strength, youth, and silver, but you are not the sum of every sliver, you in America. For us in Europe, the wife does not lead a hard life. For us in Europe, black skin is not leprosy to keep at bay. For us in Europe, you can be without money and still be in the world. For us in Europe, you can get by without Sundays learning the divine, because nearly no one stands at the altar, a grumbling, sobering reality for you in America. Of course, the good ones among you know this very well. The rest are clueless about pomp and fanfare, hearing only the flattering choir of their newspapers, feeling that much higher. Pay no heed, working man, let them go, the vanities of the bourgeoisie. Papers, flags, and parades are laughable cement facades. A parade of facades, right? For the true border between takers and makers runs right through all nations. For you in America, just like for us in Europe.
Yeah, we're doing all shit.
Yeah. So, and you're still going to sit alone at the spotlight. So for somebody who claims to be poetry adjacent,
Yes.
like that was fantastic as a translation, but also in the double tap poem, your perhaps mishap. Like, yeah, I'm quite impressed to hear that read aloud, having been an avid Bupkes reader. So what's amazing is that all three of those pieces are available for free on the internet.
They are at thebupkes.com.
Also not for free.
No, nothing is free.
Should people wish to subscribe? So having referred earlier to, I haven't planned any of this, referred earlier to the idea actually that it's a reading that brings together local readers and local writers and local audience, then there's actually something quite remarkable happening, I think, at the Bupkes, hearing those things which I've seen on screen, read aloud. So thank you, William. Do people have any questions?
Besides more wine.
Yeah. Feel free. We'll
Please take more wine.
Yeah, exactly. Take more wine, and we'll also stop the Q&A in time so that proper priorities are respected. But Mimi.
What was the hardest thing of the translation? Like, was it the form or how to translate it?
Yeah, the hardest thing with translation.
Like, so many ways you could translate it. Like, what had because it's such a recurring, it gives the tone and everything.
Yeah.
But it has so many nuances. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I myself am learning and getting Tucholsky sort of lives in me a little bit, but I'm by no means any kind of heir to Tucholsky, not at all. But every time you read him, you pick up more, but you also have deadlines. So at some point you have to say, this is good enough for now, and then draft it again, and edit it again, and at some point, you know, especially if you're making a book proposal, you're like, well, I hope this is good enough, and then you submit it. But yeah, finding that balance between the rhyme, and because the wonderful thing about German is the way it's structured with verbs on the end, you can really easily, it has this beautiful flow and rhythm to it that English doesn't have. And Tucholsky really was a master writer and so dominant in German, which is maybe one reason why he doesn't exist that much in English. So as I said earlier, deciding like, do you want to get the joke? Do you want to get the rhyme? Do you want to get like the rhythm of it? Like what do you want to get out of this translation? I mean, that's kind of the hardest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, when you read both in German and English.
Yeah.
So what do you appreciate differently in the two languages?
In general, with Tucholsky.
However you want.
I can't think of any good examples right now, but there are certain things that I can, and I think this goes for anyone who speaks, I think everyone here speaks different languages. There's just things you can express in another language that you can't express in your native language, or vice versa, or you think a thought in another language, it just makes more sense to you in that language. You're a different person in a different language. I'm different in English than I am in German, as I think we all are in the various languages we speak. And my pitiful 2 languages is nothing compared to like the 5 that on average I think everyone here speaks. So yeah, and German, it's a language that gets a bad rap, thanks to a little man called Adolf Hitler. You may have heard of him. But it's also the language of Brecht and Tucholsky, and a language of beautiful poets and playwrights. And it's a language of great meaning, and also like you don't really understand Western civilization without understanding German, I think, because so much of it goes through that. So for me, who accidentally went to Germany and accidentally learned German and didn't have any real like reason to ever, it's just a complete accident of life, it's been a great privilege to, looking back, think, oh, I understand a language is kind of important for understanding a lot of other things. And with Tucholsky, it's just, if you read him, you're like, you just think, wow, because the way he's able to.
Who is he? I'm sorry.
So no, it's fine. No, it's fine. This is the amazing thing. Tucholsky was like an iconic figure of the Weimar Republic, and today, you know, everyone knows Brecht, but he was a contemporary of Brecht, but no one knows Tucholsky, and then many others whose names are escaping me right now. Kurt Tucholsky was born in 1880 something, I guess. And he was, like many people of his era, he was a leftist German Jew, publicist, writer. He was behind the Weltbühne, satirist. What was amazing about him is that he was clearly leftist, clearly anti-fascist, but he had no problem attacking his own. Wherever he saw hypocrisy, wherever he saw contradictions, wherever he saw foolishness, he was happy to, he went after people. The title of one of his biographies is something like, the man who tried, I'm forgetting the German, die Katastrophe mit einer Schreibmaschine zu stoppen. The man who tried to stop a catastrophe with a typewriter. So he, in the 1920s, I mean, when you read his work, you forget that he wasn't living in the late 1930s or 1940s, because the things he was describing in the 1920s, which is well before the Nazis came to power, he was describing everything that ended up happening. He was dead by that point. And everything, if you read him now, it's both comforting. It's comforting to know that, to like feel this connection across time and space to someone who lived through that and went through that, saw those things happening. It's also like incredibly terrifying because you see the patterns, right? So if I do get to write this book and translate it, you can get to know more about Tucholsky, but you can also, he's also like, there is some stuff in English and other languages, and he was a brilliant, inspiring, and very funny, just like very, very funny guy. Yeah.
Why did you do it?
Why did he kill himself? Well, there's still speculation. It's a good question. There's still speculation if he really did. But I think that's a little bit of conspiracy theory. I think it's pretty clear that he killed himself. So he fled. He wasn't. I mean, he put himself in a self-imposed exile before the Nazis had a chance to expel people, and then he was told, "Please don't come back." Like I said, if you look up the documents from in the archives, he literally is, I think, number 8. When the Nazis came to power in 1933, he was one of the first people that the Nazis said, persona non grata, do not come back to Germany, you aren't welcome here. So that's impressive, like to be number 8, not bad. I think he killed himself, if I understand Jewish humor and Jewish satire, it's because it is deeply, deeply embedded in sadness and Weltschmerz and a world that he didn't want to live in anymore. And he's not the only person. He's not the only person of that kind of artistic, cultural milieu that didn't see the point of living in a world with fascism.
Joseph Roth.
Sorry, what?
Joseph Roth is
Yeah,
the same.
for example, yeah. Yeah, Tolstoy was not unique. I mean, many people just
It's like,
yeah. Let's go around and talk about all people commit suicide.
Feeling is slightly nationalistic here, but going to Sweden back in those days, yes, we have some people who are very pro the Nazis and very in society, and probably quite welcomed by many. So why would he have killed himself?
Are we getting straight to this 3-part series?
I find it's fascinating because that's
Yeah.
probably.
I mean, why does anyone kill themselves? I mean, I don't think it's a rational
I don't think it's a
decision.
rational decision either, but I mean, I don't think it's about, oh my God, I got exiled from Germany and therefore I'm going to kill myself.
No, I don't think. I don't think it was a political reason. I think he had an incredible amount of Weltschmerz, which is one of my favorite German words. That I think we should all be able to relate to these days. And I think, and also who knows what his psychological condition was. I mean, there's a million things that we can only speculate about, right? I don't think it was a one-to-one causal relationship like the Nazis are being mean to me, so I'm going to kill myself. I think there was obviously a lot going on with him. And many people who are dealing in these kinds of topics and issues are, as we just said, I mean, there are many people who unfortunately ended that way. And I think there's probably an existential question of, especially, I mean, in 1935, so like the worst of the Nazi crimes weren't happening yet, although the writing was on the wall. And again, this was someone who was very prescient. I mean, this was someone, if you read his texts in the 1920s, 15, 20 years before the worst things happened, he saw the demise of democracy, he saw the rise of fascism, he saw the rise of authoritarianism, he saw the destruction of humanity, the dehumanization, things that we're all experiencing again today. And I think he probably saw, maybe there was, again, total speculation, some amount of agency, if he's gonna, if the end is happening anyway, I don't know. But yeah, Sweden was certainly a better place to be than other parts of Europe at that time.
I'm not saying it's a good place to be, I'm just saying Swedish have the same, natural people have a special place in hell.
Yeah. That's okay.
If I may,
Yeah, please.
More general,
Yeah.
going back to
Yeah, of course.
the Nazis, and you mentioned the 8th on the list. Where does literature fit? I mean, of course, I've been to some fabulous exhibitions done by the German state on divergent art. Where does writing and poetry sit within that? I'd be interested. I've never really thought about it, is basically what I'm saying. Yet, I think I should have.
Do you mean in that context of how it's remembered and how it's used in German?
Well, however you want to engage with the question, but it's also the fact that you've mentioned how complex it is even just to translate. Is there that kind of a linguistic barrier that's preventing us understanding the value of, let's say, the writing as divergent, or seen as divergent, as compared to art, which we wander around the gallery and we can all sort of fit in, understand, feel we understand. Yeah,
there's certainly I mean, the biggest shame about Tucholsky today is that he's really respected in academic circles. He's really in the ivory tower, and you have to be like a Germanist, and you speak German, and be in this very special elite. But Tucholsky was a man of the people. Tucholsky wrote for the common person. Tucholsky wrote for like his texts are very dense and you can get a lot out of them, but he really was writing for everyone. And he was writing for the working class. And so it's actually really, really sad that today he's only really accessible in a very elite kind of way. And that's something Tucholsky would have never wanted. And so in Germany today, he's respected in left-wing circles, he's respected by people who know Weimar Republic. There's the Tucholsky Museum in Weinsberg, where he wrote a novel, he wrote a love story. That part of Germany, like many parts of Germany, is now heavily influenced by the AfD, and that museum is under incredible pressure. And there's sort of a new revisionism happening, so actually like Tucholsky's work is being threatened by a new wave of fascism in the same way that he himself as a person was being threatened 90 years ago. So unfortunately his work, it's still this, to your point, it doesn't really come out into the popular imagination.
And is that true of many, say, great authors of that period?
Well, again, like the playwrights know, Brecht is super famous and they still put on his plays and everybody knows his work. And these kinds of works have been adapted and translated and reimagined in different contexts. But Tucholsky is someone that, for whatever reason, has kind of maybe because he committed suicide. He's like the Billy Wilder of his day, who's like one of my favorite directors. Speaking of people who are prescient and people who really understand the Teutonic imaginary of the German soul. But yeah, he's certainly not unique, but he is from that era, there was just such a plethora of fantastic artistic minds and scientific minds, and many of them are Jewish, and many of them ended up in camps or in exile. But Tucholsky kind of has this strange anonymity about him that, again, unless you're really involved or you've read one of the couple books that have been translated, unfortunately just... But hey, maybe it could be, a USP for me, as they say in the business.
It's maybe the connection to the lack of connection to the Frankfurt Schule maybe relevant there as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Most of these guys we know through because the Frankfurt Schule moves to America and writes about Brecht mixed with popularity and popular culture. I think Karl Kraus is a bit like that as well. I mean, who's maybe not as well known as Brecht, but still kind of rescued from history by Adorno's writing about.
Yeah, well, Kraus has a great. He has a great quote about Tucholsky. He was. I'm forgetting it. I think it was the typewriter quote. He tried to stop it. I think that quote comes from him, and how he described Tucholsky, that this was just a man who was waging a one-man war against a fascist authoritarian force that he could never actually stop. But I think that's a great point. I was going to say that this is why I say how amazing it is if you speak German to understand so much else, because a lot of American thinking is really German thinking, and it's really actually German Jewish thinking. Exactly because of the Frankfurt School.
But then the memory of the 1920s in Weimar actually also has kind of become an American Jewish thing.
Yes,
the Germans themselves.
Even though most American Jews don't know that because they're not taught that, because there's been a total cut. Because of Israel, there's been a total cut in the continuity of history and European history. But yeah.
So, a former collaborating host in the reading series, Martin Westlake, can't be here because he's on Eurostar. But in spirit, he sent me a message saying, "Oh, you should start the evening with this quote from Valerie," and now I need to check it's Valerie, not Valerie. You should start the evening with this quote from Paul Valery. A poem is never finished, only abandoned. And to Mimi's question about deadlines. When do you kind of finish a translation? And your answer was deadline. Then actually, what a great moment to bring in that quote, courtesy of Martin.
Yeah.
A rewarding discussion on Weimar, suicide, and its application for today.
Or was it?
Never finished. It is only moved
Abandoned.
to
That's right. It's only abandoned.
the balcony, around the table,
More wine.
interlude, and then we continue.
Yeah.
The next section will be you're allowed to move around, refill your drink, let go of some liquid in an appropriate place as required. But 70 years ago, the City Lights published in the Pocket Poets series Howl and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg. So when I did my master's 20 years ago, right at the start of it, somebody organised a 50th anniversary reading of Howl by Allen Ginsberg, and I didn't go. I was looking for a flat or some banal life reason. But now, 20 years later, 70 years after Howl was published, you get a reading of Howl by Allen Ginsberg. It's called Howl for Carl Solomon. Carl Solomon was another writer, somebody to whom Ginsberg wanted to evidently dedicate a serious piece of work. There's a couple of things to think about, that might be helpful as we go through it. So first of all, there's lots of lines that start with who. Well, we'll just go with the flow. But the who, the first, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked. So all of these who's are about the best minds of his generation, basically his friends, the people he knows. So it's describing all the people he knows. There's a brief reference to NC, the secret hero of these poems, Neil Cassidy, who is also kind of the inspirational figure behind On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Somebody else in this kind of milieu who gets mentioned. And Rockwell appears a bit later on. Rockwell is an asylum where Carl Solomon went and had electroshock therapy. Moloch will also appear as a word. Moloch is a name in Revelation, I think. I should have done a bit more research for, a kind of destructive angel. Probably somebody in the room is actually able to talk about that, but we will save that until after you have experienced this. And I have some associates for this reading, so you don't just have to listen to me and to give you 3 times or more the experience. How for Carl Solomon. Part 1. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters, burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night. Who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats, floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant, cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake-like tragedy among the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who covered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets, listening to the terror through the wall, who got busted in their pubic beards, returning through Laredo with a belt of Marana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels, or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death or purgatory of their torsos night after night, with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls, incomparable blind streets of shuddering cloud and lightning in the mind leaping toward the poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time and between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green trees, cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftop storefront boroughs of tea and joyride, neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the warm winter dust of Brooklyn, ashcan rantings and kind king lights of mind, who chain themselves to subways for the endless ride, from Battery to Holy Bronx on Benzedrine, into the noise of wheels and children, brought them down shuddering, mouth-racked and battered, bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance in the drear light of the zoo, who sank all night in submarine light of Bigfoots, floated out and sat through stale beer afternoon in desolate fugaces, listening to the crack of doom on a hydrogen jukebox. Talked continuously, 72 hours, from park to pad to bar to Bellevue to museum to the Brooklyn Bridge. A lost battalion of platonic conversationalists, jumping down slopes of fire escapes, of windowsills, of Empire State, out of the moon. Yakking, screaming, vomiting, whispering, facts and shocks at hospitals and jails and wars. Whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights with brilliant eyes. Meet for the synagogue cast on the pavement, who vanished into nowhere, Zen, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering from Eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines for China under junk withdrawals in Newark's bleak, furnished rooms. He wandered around at midnight in the railroad yard, wondering where to go, and went, leaving no broken hearts. Who lit cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through snow to lonesome farms in grandfather nights, who studied Plotinus, Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy and Bach Kabbalah, because the cosmos instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas. Who loitered through the streets of Idaho, seeking visionary Indian angels who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy, who jumped in limousines with the Chinaman of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter, midnight, small-town streetlight rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston, seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America and eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadow of dungarees and the lava and ash of poetry scattered in fireplace Chicago, who reappeared on the West Coast, investigating the FBI in beards and shorts with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets, who burned cigarette holes in their arms, protesting the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism, who distributed super-communist pamphlets
in Union Square, weeping and undressing while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed them down and wailed down Wall, and the Staten Island Ferry also wailed. Who broke down crying in white gymnasiums, naked and trembling before the beam machinery of other skeletons, who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking, pederasty and intoxication, who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof waving genitals and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by sacred minefields and screamed with joy, who blew and were blown by those human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of Atlantic and Caribbean love, who bawled in the morning, in the evenings in rose gardens, in the grass of public parks and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whomever come who may. Here comes Grizzly, trying to giggle, but wound up with a sob behind the partition in a Turkish bar when the blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their love voice to the three old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew with the heterosexual dollar, the one-eyed shrew that winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip the intellectual golden threads of the craftsman's loom, who copulated, ecstatic and insatiate, with a bottle of beer, a sweetheart, a package of cigarettes, a candle, and fell off the bed, and continued along the floor, and down the hall, and ended fainting on the wall, with a vision of ultimate cunt, and cum eluding the last jism of consciousness, who sweetened the snatches of a million girls, trembling in the sunset, and were red-eyed in the morning, but prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks on the barns and naked in the lake, who went out pouring through Colorado in myriad stolen night cars, MC, secret hero of his poems, Coxman and Adonis of Denver, joys of the memory of his innumerable days of girls in empty lots and backyards, movie houses, rickety roads, on mountaintops in caves, or with gaunt waitresses, in familiar roadside, lonely petticoat upliftings, and especially secret gas station solipsisms of John's and hometown alleys too, who faded out, vast, sordid movies, were shifted in dreams, woke on a sudden Manhattan, and picked themselves up out of basements, hung over with heartless talking and horrors of Third Avenue iron dreams, and stumbled to unemployment offices, who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank docks, waiting for a door in the East River to open to a room full of steamboat and opium, who created great suicidal dramas on the apartment cliffbanks of the Hudson under wartime blue floodlight of the moon, and their heads still be crowned with laurel in oblivion, who ate the lamb's stew of the imagination, or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the rivers of Bowery, who kept at the romance of the streets with their pushcarts full of onions and bad music, who sat in boxes, breathing the darkness under the bridge,
and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts, who coughed on the 6th floor of Harlem, crowned with flame under the tubercular sky, surrounded by orange crates of theology, who scribbled all night, rocking and rolling over lofty incantations, which in the yellow morning were stanzas of gibberish,
who cooked rotten animals, lung, heart, feet, tail, borscht, and tortillas, dreaming of a pure vegetable kingdom, who plunged themselves under meat trucks looking for an egg, who threw their watches off the roof to cast their ballot for eternity outside of time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every day for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successively, unsuccessfully, gave up and were forced to open antique stores where they thought they were growing old and cried, who were burned alive in their innocent flannel suits on Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden verse and the tanked-up clatter of the iron regiments of fashion and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising and the mustard gas of sinister, intelligent editors, or run down by the drunken taxicabs of absolute reality, who jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge. This actually happened and walked away unknown and forgotten in the ghostly days of Chinatown. Soup, alleyways, and fire trucks, not even one free beer. Who sang under their windows in despair, fell out of the subway window, jumped in the filthy passage, leaped on Negroes, cried all over the street, danced on broken wine glasses, barefoot, smashed phonographic records of nostalgic European 1930s German jazz, finished the whiskey and threw up, groaned into the bloody toilet, moans in their ears, and blasts the colossal steam whistles, who barreled down the highways of the past, journeying to each other's hot rod, Golgotha, jail, solitude watch, or Birmingham jazz incarnation, who drove cross-country 72 hours to find out if I had a vision, or you had a vision, or he had eternity, who journeyed to Denver, who died in Denver, who came back to Denver and waited in vain, who watched over Denver and brooded alone in Denver, and finally went away to find out the time, and now Denver is lonesome for her heroes, who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals, praying for each other's salvation and light and breath, until the soul illuminated its hair for a second, who crashed through their minds in jail, waiting for impossible criminals with golden heads and the charm of reality in their hearts, who sang sweet blues to Alcatraz, who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, or Rocky Mountain to Denver, or Tangiers to Boise, or Southern Pacific to the Black Locomotive, or Harvard to Narcissus, to Woodlawn, to the Daisy Chain or Grave, who demanded sanity trials, accusing the radio of hypnotism, and were left with their insanity at hand and a hung jury, who threw potato salad at CCNY lecturers on diarism and subsequently presented themselves on the granite steps of the madhouse with shaven heads and half-broken speech of suicide, demanding instantaneous lobotomy, and who were given instead the concrete void of insulin, metrazole, electricity, hydrotherapy, psychotherapy, occupational therapy, ping pong, and amnesia, who, in humorous protest, overturned only one symbolic ping pong table, resting briefly in Catalonia. Returning years later, truly bald except for a wig of blood and tears and fingers, to the visible madman doom of the wards of the mad towns of the east. Pilgrim states, rock loans and greatos, fetid halls, bickering with echoes of the soul, rocking and rolling in the midnight solitude felt, dolzen rails of love, dream of night, a nightmare, bodies turned to stone as heavy as the moon. With mother finally And the last fantastic book flung out of the tenement window, and the last door closed at 4 a.m., and the last telephone slammed at the wall in reply, and the last furnished room emptied down to the last piece of mental furniture. A yellow paper rose twisted on a wire hanger in the closet, and even that imaginary, nothing but a hopeful little bit of hallucination. Ah, Carl, while you are not safe, I am not safe, and now you're really in the total animal soup of time. And who, therefore, ran through the icy streets obsessed with a sudden flash of the alchemy of the use of the ellipsis catalog, the variable measure of vibrating plane, who dreamt and made incarnate gaps in time and space, through images juxtaposed and trapped the archangel of the soul between two visual images, and joined the elemental verbs, and set them now, the dash of consciousness, together, jumping with sensation of pater, omnipotence, eternal days. To recreate the syntax and measure of all human prose, and stand before you speechless, and intelligent and shaking with shame, rejected yet confessing out the soul to conform to the rhythm of thought in his naked and endless head. The madman thumb, an angel beat in time, unknown yet putting down here what might be left to say in the time come after death. And rose reincarnate in the ghostly clothes of jazz, in the gold-horn shadow of the bands, and blew the suffering of America's naked mind for love into Ela, Ela, Lama, Lama, Shabatani, saxophone cry that shivered the cities down to the last radio. With the absolute heart of the poem of life, butchered out of their own bodies, good to eat 1,000 years. Part 2. Refresh. What sphinx of cement and aluminium bashed open their skulls and ate up their brains
and imagination?
Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ashcans and unobtainable dollars, children screaming under the stairways, boys sobbing in armies, old men weeping in the parks. Moloch, Moloch, nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, mental Moloch, Moloch the heavy judger of men. Moloch, the incomprehensible prison. Moloch, the crossbone soulless jailhouse and crossbone stars. Moloch, whose buildings are judgment. Moloch, the bathstone of war. Moloch, the stunned governments. Moloch, whose mind is pure machinery. Moloch, whose mind is blood running mush from his fingers. 10 armies. Moloch, whose breast is a cannibal dynamo. Moloch, whose ear is a smoking tomb. Moloch, whose eyes are 1,000 blind windows. Moloch, whose skyscrapers stand in the long streets like endless Jehovah's. Moloch, whose factories dream and croak in the fog. Moloch, whose smokestacks and antennae crown the cities. Moloch, whose love is endless oil and stone. Moloch, whose soul is electricity and banks. Moloch, whose poverty is spectre of genius. Moloch, whose fate is a cloud of sexless hydrogen.
Moloch, whose name is the mind.
Moloch, in whom I sit lonely. Moloch, in whom I dream angels. Crazy in Moloch. Cocksucker in Moloch. Lack-love and manless in Moloch. Moloch, who entered my soul early. Moloch, in whom I am in consciousness without a body. Moloch, who frightened me out of my natural ecstasy. Moloch, whom I abandon. Wake up in Moloch, light streaming out of the sky. Monarch, roving apartments, invisible suburbs, skeleton treasuries, blind capitals, demonic industries, spectral nations, invisible mad houses, granite cocks, monstrous bombs. They broke their backs lifting Moloch to heaven, pavements, trees, radios, tons. Lifting the city to heaven, which exists and is everywhere about us. Visions, omens, hallucinations, miracles, ecstasies, gone down the American river. Dreams, adorations, illuminations, religions, the whole boatload of sensitive bullshit. Breakthroughs, over the river, flips and crucifixions. Gone down the flood, highs, epiphanies, despairs, 10 years animal screams and suicides, minds, new loves, mad generation, down on the rocks of time. Real holy laughter in the river, they saw it all. The wild eyes, the holy yells, they bade farewell. They jumped off the roof to solitude, weeping, carried flowers down to the river, into the street. Part 3. Earlier I said Rockwell. It's not Rockwell, it's Rockland. That is the name of the site. Carl Solomon. I'm with you in Rockland, where you're madder than I am.
I'm with you in Rockland, where you must feel very strange.
I'm with you in Rockland, where you imitate the shade of my mother.
I'm with you in Rockland, where you murdered your 12 secretaries.
I'm with you in Rockland, where you laugh at this invisible humour.
I'm with you in Rockland,
where we are great writers on the same dreadful typewriter. I'm with you in Rockland, with your condition has become serious and is reported on the radio.
I'm with you in Rockland,
where the faculties of the skull no longer admit the worms of the senses. I'm with you in Rockland, where you drink the tea of the breasts of the spinstress of Utica. I'm with you in Rockland, where you pun on the bodies of your nurses, the harpies of the Bronx. I'm with you in Rockland, where you scream in a straitjacket that you're losing the game of the actual ping-pong of the abyss. I'm with you in Rockland, where you bang on the catatonic piano.
The soul is innocent and immortal, but should never die ungodly in an armed madhouse. I'm with you in Rockland, where 50 more shots will never return your soul to its body again. From its pilgrimage to a cross in the void. I'm with you in Rockland, where you accuse your doctors of insanity and plot an evil socialist revolution against the fascist national Golgotha.
I'm with you in Rockland, where you split the heavens in Long Island and resurrect your living human Jesus from the superhuman tomb. I'm with you in Rockland, where there are 25,000 mad comrades all together singing the final stanzas of the International. I'm with you in Rockland, where we hug and kiss the United States under our bed sheets, the United States that costs all night won't let us sleep. I'm with you in Rockland, where we wake up electrified out of the coma by our own souls, airplanes roaring over the roof. They come to drop angelic bombs. The hospital illuminates itself. Imaginary walls collapse. Oh, skinny legions run outside. Oh, starry-spangled shock of mercy, the eternal war is here. Oh, victory, forget your underwear, we're free. I'm with you in Rockland. In my dreams, you walk dripping from a sea journey on the highway across America in tears to the door of my cottage in the western night.
Wow,
actually sounded like you rehearsed that for a long time. Amazing.
Yeah, interlude. And anyone can do it. Organise a reading of hell in your own bedroom.
Don't be spontaneous.
Completely spontaneous. I had no idea what to do there. Just keep reading. Yeah, more or less. I didn't know to stop or to come in, but I just kept reading coming. Deborah did a better job coming in.
I'm sure. No, it was really good. You balanced it very well.
Yeah.
Very more constant, and then she would kind of jump in there, sort of creative and yeah. It was like a jazz concert with words.
Yeah.
It's double bass.
That's the feedback we want.
It was beautiful. I was quite concerned about 20 minutes reading a poem, but it went really in a way that felt very impactful.
Yeah, like obviously not everybody is actually going to turn up to like 20 minutes of jazz improvisation. That also puts some people off, but like 20 minutes of jazz improvising, yeah, people turn up for. And the words aren't improvised, but the rhythms were, and like the jazz connection between beat, poetry, and jazz. There's something there.
Did you hear this somewhere before? Like, did you hear this concept of people reciting at the same time one canon like this before? You came up with the idea.
For this?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of how before like that. In terms of my own writing, I've had people reading over the top of each other, but with multiple different things happening at the same time, so you can't actually hear what's happening. Whereas this is, improvising on the same thing. Yeah, that was
It
it.
reminded me of something, and I don't want you to think in any way negative, but when I was a kid, I lived in a Christian building, and we were the only Hindus,
Okay.
in Bombay. And everyone was Catholic, so belonging to the Vatican Church, until there was this, and really don't take it, but the beginning that reminded me of the scene where I was a child and I went to a funeral, to someone's house where there was a wake. And it was the first time I ever heard people speaking in tongues.
Okay.
And if you know what the speaking in tongues is, where everyone's praying or everyone's doing something at the same minute, at the same time, but they're not synchronized. And I was standing there and I was like, because I had gone through rosaries, angelus, and because in India, if you're a Catholic, you're really Catholic. And I grew up with people who would, at 7 o'clock, they would say, sorry, we're going to pray. And I would be in their house and I would listen to them pray. And then now I was at this place, and this reminded me of that moment, the beginning. That when it went on to those, I mean, very far away from those ideas. But it was very nice, very interesting.
Even Catholics have anatomy.
Yeah.
That's a good title of the story.
Speaking in tongues or something like
To
that.
confirm your point, let's just say as a not so perfect Catholic, once you mentioned that point, it's so like a mass.
Yeah.
Very kind of intense, very
Yeah,
charity.
in prayer, when the priest leads and then you repeat maybe, or...
Yeah, there's a kind of call and response.
Absolutely, and I thank you for pointing that out.
I was very scared to bring it up because obviously I was a minority back then, and I really ran home. I went home and I went to all the other Catholic neighbors and I said, is this normal? Like,
don't worry, I don't like running home from mass so often.
No, but that was okay. I
had a gun to my head, so I wanted to be fed afterwards.
But it was, thanks for bringing me back. So many years
Yeah, nobody left.
But now you can all run home and say, is this normal? Absolutely not.
But when it's read like that, in particular when there's multiple voices and there is that kind of chanty tone, you're not actually hearing the individual words, you're just kind of going with the flow of it, and it's beautiful. I mean, you don't always get it in the way you would if you read it, you'd be picking over, but it's meant to be experienced that way, I think, because there is that natural rhythm in it. It's beautiful.
And I think it would be too long to read it as one person without a break.
Mm-hmm.
Here you could take that break when he would continue, and it was so nice. It was like listening in stereo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but don't you feel trapped? I mean, all three of you in the same text. I mean, wouldn't you be tempted to start ad-libbing and saying something opposite to whatever else is saying, just because it's impossible to stay trapped because you're trapped? No? Or am I just the only claustrophobe here?
They're all actors at heart.
I think that's the point of it, though. That it's, they're kind of, he and his contemporaries are kind of, trapped together, almost like in some kind of terrible marriage, in a way. And then there's these points of explosion or ejaculation or something, if you will. Cock and balls! You don't want to be facile about it, but there is that kind of rage within it that is just looking for a place to burst out. And yet it's very controlled and measured and incantatory. It's like a kind of an exercise in weird control and and loss of control.
It's interesting to note that that poem was written in the 1950s, and when it was written, it was banned. It wasn't able to be spoken about. It wasn't published. It wasn't anything. So this is something that the talk of the words and whatever else, it meant something then to the people who were listening to it. That's for sure.
Thank you for putting up with that. And have a drink, and then I'll reconvene shortly for Deborah. And we have somebody who actually takes care and attention about their writing. Deborah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. Yes. I'm Deborah Golinju. I'm a lifelong writer, but rather like William, I don't consider myself a poet under normal circumstances. However, I find that rage helps quite a lot. Most of my poems are written in a state of fury. So I don't know what that says about how they are emitted, and that probably means they're not, structured and crafted so beautifully as a poet might do it. But they are there, they exist, and there's one that's kind of appropriate for this evening. We've been talking about. By the way, I also write other things. I do travel writing, and I suppose I should do an advert.
Yes.
I wrote this. Which was published 6 years ago, and really I should finish the next one, but that is out there and here this evening if anybody would like a copy, which is a thriller, a literary thriller. This one is not a literary thriller, this one is a short poem called Howl on Finding Virginia Woolf in the British Museum gift shop. And we were talking earlier about early 20th century writers and artists and creatives who couldn't stand the rise of fascism. And I think we have to count Virginia amongst them. So she finds her place this evening. Howl on Finding Virginia Woolf in the British Museum gift shop. Strong nose, hair loosely tied, head slightly bowed. But why is her appearance of any note? Because it is on a tea towel. The woman who wrote the importance of women being able to spend money of their own, have rooms of their own, rights of their own, to defend, minds of their own. Her face is now wiping the tears of washing up from dishes. The woman who said we should murder the angels in the attic, our mothers and grandmothers, murder not them, but their wishes and the fear of their disapproval. She's here on a tea towel with a neat hem, as if nobody heard her. Write honestly, she said. Write as if no one is judging. Ah, she's been judged, criticised for her class, her voice, her vowels, plums in her mouth, they said. She's been condemned for her choice to trudge pockets full of stones into the water when the birds began to speak in Greek again. And now the water from the kitchen counter gently seeps into her skin, her eyes. That's that one. And I'm going to give you a choice of flash fiction to end the evening on. We have a story about peat cutters in Ireland, which may or may not require me to do an Irish accent. And I think that's in the right order. Yeah. Or your other choice is a piece of flash fiction about a girl experiencing the loss of her grandmother and the onset of adulthood. In that moment, that piece of flash fiction. So, what's it going to be? The shovel, peat cutting in Ireland, or the girl losing her grandmother? It's up to you to vote.
Irish accent.
Okay, we're going to have to do a show of hands. I mean, we might be able to have both, but I don't know how we're doing for time. Let's have a show of hands first of all for which one we start with. Shovel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that chorus?
Yeah.
Or something? Okay, we're going with shovel. Loretta, I'm so sorry for about to occur. Okay. The shovel. The air was a smoky blue, as if the peat were already burning. But the smell of it, still damp and wormy, told a different tale. Said to Leda, this turf was still rooted to the earth through its mossy layer of grasses. It was not dry, and certainly not to be set aflame yet. She could see where the cutting had already started, though, see the piles of perfect clods leaning upright in turdy little wigwams dotted across the bog. Harry wished he could wake up. He should be in his bed in Vauxhall, not in this God-forsaken bog. He was on edge, sleepy and jumpy. Are you sure you know what you're doing? He eyed Leda's skinny right arm, swinging the cutting iron between them as she strode across the land. Over her left shoulder, even more terrifyingly, she bore a shotgun. He knew better than to take that. At least let me carry the shovel. How many times? It is not a shovel. Well, whatever. It looks heavy. Let me
He tried to take the tool from her. "It's a schlong, Harry, and I can carry it." Leda hefted it away from his grip in a wide arc and nearly took his hand off with the curved upper edge. She narrowly avoided turning the shotgun into a sawn-off one. Harry lengthened his stride to keep up with her. He wondered if he should have told his editor how things had escalated. It was supposed to be a simple story about EU regs and rising fuel prices and peatland habitat decimation, but now here he was playing pistols at dawn with a blazing-eyed local whose blood was well and truly up. He glanced at her thrust chest and flying black hair and had to admit his blood was rising like the sap too. "Why did you bring a spade anyway? I thought the point was to cut them, to stop them cutting." "I bought the schlong, Harry, because you have to speak their language. These people, they don't understand about preservation and round-leaf sundew or marsh fritillary butterflies, but they do understand about ownership and land rights. They understand that this is my father's schlong, just like it's his bog and his gun." Harry, the journalist, noted how she used the present tense. Harry, the green-gilled, weak-bellied reporter, noted how her voice had lowered. They had come to the top of a small hummock, and below them were 3 men. The trespassers were all heads down, backs lumbered into cutting. "Why don't they use a mechanical cutter?" Harry muttered. Leda snorted. "You can't get one of those sausage machines out here." She staked the schlong decisively into the peat. Harry heard it squelch and watched it sway to a standstill like a flag. He could see everything sharply and in slow motion. Leda hoisted the gun off her shoulder and braced herself. A surprisingly clear ooze seeped out of the earth around her boots as she sank into her stance. She crooked the weapon, armed it, and braced it against her into the sky. The shot splintered the air. There were no birds to scatter or call out, only a bizarre spongy echo, like the muffled voice of the bog itself. "This is my bog, Donal Ahern, and you know it. Off my land." The men had jumped to attention at the crack of the gun, and then visibly slumped into amused poses, relaxed into the handles of their schlong. One of them spoke. "Come and help us if you like, little Lady McGreer. We're not going anywhere. We have work to do here. There's no work anywhere else, God knows." "Donal Ahern, I will cut my own grandfather's turf, so help me, when it pleases me, and I will cut you down if you lift one more crumb of it. He's turning in his grave with every clod you put your dirty boot into. Off! Off my land!" Ahern looked at Leda and then slowly slid his gaze to Harry. Harry swore he could see the man's pupils shrink in disdain. He could see the golden grey stubble on the man's chin. He glanced down, unable to hold the stare. When he looked back up, Ahern was smiling. "Leda, run along home now and take your English shit stirrer with you. Perhaps he could fuck you up your sweet little arse like you're trying to shaft us." Leda crooked the gun and loaded it again. She lifted it against her narrow frame and took aim at Donal. Harry saw her draw the gun down Ahern's body. Ahern seemed to leap into the air before the shot had been fired. He screamed, "Bitch! You nearly had my foot off!" "If that's the only way to get your foot off my land, then that's what I'll do, Mr. Ahern." Leda armed the gun again and raised it. Ahern turned and started running. His companions looked at Leda, who shifted her aim towards one of them And they turned too and ran a raggedy, stumbling run in galoshes after a herd. That's your offering, unless you really want the one-page bringer of gifts.
It's one page.
Yeah.
Give us a one-page gift.
Okay, so this is the teenage girl who's lost her grandmother. The bringer of gifts. In the kitchen, unfashionable crockery is wrapped hastily in newspaper and placed in boxes labelled charity. Dad detonates a swear word from the cupboard under the stairs. He's rushing to get everything out and into the car before the storm that's forecast comes. On the first floor, Uncle Charlie retches violently as he scrubs mould from the corner of the bath. No one notices Ashley sneaking past, climbing upward. To her, Gran's attic smells of Christmas past, of old tinsel and sweet sweat and fuse boxes. She pushes the hatch wide open and nimbly levers herself up. It's dark. The chinking and grumbling below now muffled. She waits for her eyes to adjust and then treads softly, carefully, wobbling along the beams that creak and whisper warnings about putting her new Nikes through the ceiling, but she's already spotted what she's looking for. Hanging on an ancient nail is a walnut curio cabinet decked with miniature casements holding treasure. A milk bottle, a milk bottle top, a chess piece, an opal fruit wrapper, the red kind, now faded to pink. Ash peers into each tiny window of the cabinet in turn. A paperclip, a knotted silver earring, a daisy-shaped button from a child's cardigan, a piece of white lace. There must be more than 100 of these tokens. She uncurls her finger and gently touches a sea-green bead. Rain threshes against the roof tiles outside, startling Ashley and pushing air laced with brine and sparks and thunderclouds through the gaps in the chimney breast. She steadies herself, and a palm full of red brick dust tumbles to the floor. At head height, balanced on a hammer beam, sealed under a bell jar, the bringer of gifts. His feathers as dark and sleek as a midnight dinner suit. Crow wooed Gran persistently after Grandad died, bustling forth from the back hedge, bowing his head to drop favours at the kitchen step in return for pastry crumbs. That was the story the family told. He kept me going, Gran used to say. Gave me a reason to bake. Under his dome, Crow can't taste crumbs anymore, though his beak still shines like a mussel shell. He can't smell the salt or electricity in the air. He'll never fly through a storm to find his nest again. He's become a trinket, a part of his own collection now, offered up in his entirety, completing it. Hang on, I'm missing the page. It's gone. He's become a trinket, part of his collection now, offered up in his entirety, completing it. Ashley hears her father calling from downstairs. She places her finger to her lips and kisses the bell dome. just like Grandma used to do. So, a rather less intellectual end to the evening, I feel, but tying in with some of the earlier themes.
I don't think that's any less intellectual. Yeah. Have you? It's the first time you've read them aloud.
Apart from to the writers group, a couple of members of the writers group might remember versions of these things. Yeah.
Found it interesting. Your first text started with the word howl, and this book was howl. Was it planned that way?
The poem was not written for this evening, but I kind of realised that it would work as a kind of complementary piece this evening, because of Virginia Woolf finding her place, as I mentioned, kind of among those people who killed themselves at during the Second World War, actually, just to do with the kind of rage theme, I suppose, the kind of I teach as well, and I talk to my students about, they think that poetry is boring or some kind of puzzle to be solved, and they've learned all these technical terms to dissect it. You're looking at raw emotion, is what you're looking at. Raw emotion that somebody has wrestled with into a form to put into a pen. And it's barely contained emotion of one shape or another. And as I mentioned, my key driver at the moment appears to be, I don't know whether it's menopausal or something, but it appears to be rage, pure rage. When a man screamed at me in the streets a few weeks ago, and I went straight home and wrote a poem in reply. Just pure rage. So I think it fits in with that kind of, we're emitting a kind of howl of, well, at the very least, indignance.
But honestly, Virginia Woolf on the tea towel, you wouldn't need to be easily triggered to be outraged by that,
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
So she is sitting on a tea towel.
Sorry?
So this is real.
Oh, it's real. It's from a visit to the British Museum a few weeks ago, which was one of my favourite places in the world, and I stood there and nearly cried in the gift shop.
Maybe they did it to inspire poets.
Yeah, there you go. You got a poem, man. Virginia would be happy. Hope. Yeah.
A towel of her own. A towel of her own. Yes, exactly.
I know that face. Oh my God.
It's better than toilet paper.
Not really. The tea towel is worse.
I mean, in terms of her feminism, which may not be the most fashionable kind of feminism today, but she was most certainly a feminist, and
Absolutely.
that her face should be on a tea towel is some kind of
she prefers on toilet paper.
yeah.
So, thank you everybody for your time and attention. This year is the 70th anniversary since Howl was published, but today turns out to be, and I might have put together a different program if I known this at the time, the 100th birthday of the poet Frank O'Hara. Sort of contemporary of Ginsberg in many ways, but Ginsberg beats O'Hara, the New York school, the New York poets. He didn't know today was his 100th birthday, obviously because he's dead, but he didn't know that March 27th was his birthday because his Catholic parents told him his birthday was June the 27th. So tonight we can raise a glass for Frank O'Hara's 100th birthday, and you can do it again on the night that he thought would have been his 100th
I would
birthday.
definitely do that because it's my sister's birthday.
Okay, wow, fantastic. So this is a poem by Frank O'Hara, and it's called Lana Turner Has Collapsed. Lana Turner is the actress. Lana Turner has collapsed! I was trotting along and suddenly it started raining and snowing, and you said it was hailing, but hailing hits you on the head hard. So it was really snowing and raining, and I was in such a hurry to meet you, but the traffic was exactly like the sky, and suddenly I see a headline, Lana Turner has collapsed! There is no snow in Hollywood. There is no rain in California. I've been to lots of parties and acted perfectly disgraceful, but I never actually collapsed. Oh, Lana Turner, we love you, get up! Happy birthday, Frank.